In the letters from Bud Wilkinson once wrote, "You have great gifts of spirit, talent, heart, and soul. Use them, my son, to their fullest degree." I'm with Jay Wilkinson, one of Bud's two sons, and those words written on that letter really symbolize the type of transformational leader that your father was. And he wrote them to you at a unique time when you were a struggling student at Duke University. Tell us about it.
Yeah, that's very true. At that time, Spencer, I really was struggling, and those qualities that Dad alluded to were really such a foundation on which he built his Oklahoma teams and established success in other endeavors as well. And they're what I would call spiritual qualities, always focusing on others, giving back to others. And when you're going through difficult times, it's a good reminder to try to refocus your energy and your perspective on what really is key.
What was it like growing up with Bud Wilkinson, who at 31 years of age was an iconic coach already at the University of Oklahoma, a guy that really gave that state an identity through the sport that he coached so well? What was it like growing up in that context?
Well, from the time I can remember, he was famous. You're correct. Whenever we'd go through a store, an airport, people would be whispering, "There goes Bud." But truly, Spencer, the only difference between my life as a kid growing up and my brother Pat's and other classmates at Norman was the fact that our dad was famous. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He was known nationally on television. But at home, it was a very loving environment with him and my mom. We would play gin rummy. We'd shoot baskets in the backyard. I would caddy playing golf with him, and we'd watch Perry Mason on television. He was helpful with my studies if we had academic questions that we had to have. So it was a very wholesome, loving environment. The fact that he was well known was the difference.
Jay, there were some extenuating circumstances that prompted your father to write these letters to you while you were at Duke University struggling. Tell us a little bit about those.
Well, Duke at that time was a very academic, challenging school for me. You certainly, Spencer, are well aware of the demands. Being a football player, practice is very rigorous. Coach Bill Murray had 2.5-hour practices with a lot of physical contact and running, and that combined with all of the classwork put a lot of pressure on me and a lot of my other teammates. I was hospitalized twice with bleeding ulcers when I was at Duke, and I think that was in large part because of that pressure. His letters were extremely helpful to me in trying to refocus and build up my own confidence.
You talk about words and how they have the potential and possibility to transform our lives. At what point in time, as you peruse through these letters, Jay, did you really understand that there was something of significant value in the words that your father, Bud, had written to you?
This might surprise you, Spencer, but it was a year ago that I was invited to give a keynote address in Oklahoma City when they dedicated a room in my dad's memory at the Jim Thorpe Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame building. And at that time, I went into my file and I pulled out a letter that he had written me when I was in theological school, and I used that as a frame of reference to talk about my dad, and I hope telling some stories that maybe nobody had ever heard before. And it was at that time that I began to realize that I had these 47 letters that contained very philosophical perspectives on moral, religious, political themes that I think are as relevant today as when they were written over 50 years ago.
The anatomy of the letters, how did you go about the process of shaping them into what you call the Wilkinson way?
We both know there are so many basic principles and fundamentals that go into being successful, both on and off the field. But as I've reflected on those letters, I have probably compartmentalized them into 4 basic principles and themes: values, attitudes, preparation, and perseverance. And I feel, Spencer, that those were really the foundation on which my dad built the various perspectives that made him successful, not only in athletics, but on all the other endeavors that he was involved in.
Well, Jay, as a former player at the University of Oklahoma who spent significant time living in Bud House, I can say it was a pleasure to be a part in any small way of the legacy of your father, and I'm looking forward to watching you carry it on as well.
Thank you
so
very
much for
Spencer.
spending time.
Thank you.
You bet.